adaptive physical activity or a unified PE class. So you have people with and without disabilities in the same environment. You may have mentors and mentees or a buddy system. Regardless, how should you structure your adaptive physical activity or unified physical education class to include both people with and without disabilities? The secret answer is there is no change in your physical education environment. So there should be no changes in your curriculum. You should go about it the same progressive style you have been from the beginning. And if you don't know how to program for physical education, that's what we're going to learn today. Okay, so teaching adaptive PE is the same thing as like teaching physical education. A lot of people don't understand this. A lot of people think that you have to make up imaginary games or made up activities to make it seem like it's an adaptive physical activity, to make it seem like it's inclusive. But really, the fact is that you don't want to really change your general PE class. You just want to adapt the physical activities to include individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities, whatever and however that may be. So if we're changing the whole entire environment just for one or two individuals, and we're not, we're actually taking away from the rest of the folks in the gym. So it's important that you find activities that both people with and without disabilities can do in the same environment, and people with even more severe disabilities, so they can feel included in that same environment. Somebody with a mild disability feels like they can progress in their skill learning. So we're going to go ahead and talk about how we program, and then we'll talk about some mentor and mentee behaviors that you should have when you're instructing your students. So if you're going to have a 10 to 12 week program, okay, you can divide this into different types of curriculum. I advise doing a variety approach where you are teaching different activities and subjects. This one going to help you learn the different sports. 2, going to get you out of your comfort zone. And 3, it's going to keep things interesting and exciting. When students have a new sport or activity to look forward to, you get to think about those things during the week, and you get excited for them later on. Sometimes doing the same thing over and over again isn't going to be that much fun. So make sure that you keep it make sure that you're using variety. Okay, so I have a 10 or 12 week schedule. The first way you can do it is having 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 total activities planned for the year or as the semester, whatever it is. I think of it as planning for the fall and the spring. So whether you have 10 to classes or 10 to 20 classes, you'll have to either condense them into doing the same thing the following week. If you have 20 classes, you're not going to do 20 different total activities. You probably want to minimize it to 10 total activities during the semester. So you may do a 10 different activity semester, or you could do a 5 version where you teach for 5 weeks and then you teach the same classes again for the next 5 weeks. This will give you a chance to go over that lesson, make any corrections, so when you teach it the next time it's better, or it allows you to allow your volunteers or mentors to teach the class the second time. So you can first show them the lesson, teach the lesson, and then they can do that same lesson and so get some leadership experience, but also feel confident teaching it because they saw you teach it first. Okay? So you have a 10 or a 5 weeks schedule, and what I always like to do for my first unit is going to be a bowling, tossing, or rolling unit. So week 1 is either going to be bowling or rolling. So I put rolling and tossing. So any of those activities we're going to perform because I know that's going to be the most basic skill, underhand rolling, and then also maybe performing some catching as well, doing some softball, or if we're doing some yarn ball throwing to each other, that type of thing. But we're going to think of rolling toward a pin, rolling through some rolling through cones, rolling inside of a hoop, rolling the ball toward the wall, rolling the ball toward a partner, playing bocce, playing bowling. So any type of target game that involves underhand rolling, tossing, cornhole, that type of thing. So we'll do that the first week, okay? Now if somebody utilizes a wheelchair, you can give them a gutter or some type of mat so they can just roll it down so they can feel included that way. There's also ramps that you can purchase. So that would be week 1 or module 1. Would be rolling activities. That would be the main sport. Now each day is going to include a warm-up. So it's really important that each day will include a warm-up and a log or a low organized game. And then we go into the sport. So that's kind of the order. It's a 1, 2, 3 order. Warm-up, low organized game, and the sport. And then 4 obviously would be the closure. That's going to be any type of questions or assessment, or maybe you're going over some stretching, or you're doing your 1, 2, 3 in the middle, that type of thing. So when it comes to how you start the class, always with a dynamic warm-up and fitness exercises, then you're going to get into a low organized game, and then you're going to get into a sport, and then you're going to close the lesson. So the first sport would be bowling and rolling. So those types of sports can be any easy underhand throwing or rolling exercise. And then we're going to go into softball, because softball will be the lead up after rolling and underhand tossing. So that would be the next thing. So you'd also be learning how to swim bat. Okay. Next thing we're going to do after softball is, after we've learned how to throw objects, we're going to go into handball. So this is where we go into handball next. Okay. Now I might not necessarily do handball if I'm doing the 3-week unit. I might skip handball, do something like something I'm familiar with, like soccer, which will be coming up soon, or I could go into football, which would also be an upper throwing exercise. So you could progress it that way. So the next exercise after handball is going to be hockey. So I want to make sure that we are involving something with long-handed implements like a hockey stick, short-handed implements like a softball, like a bat, and then we're doing handball. So we're getting invasion games, and then we're also getting the same type of game after. But I definitely like to add in hockey if I'm playing in this 5-week unit. So rolling, softball, hockey. Hockey would be in my 4th week here. Then we would get into basketball. Okay, so that's similar to hockey, where you're playing on teams, invasion game. I may do basketball here, okay, or I could do, which would be the next one in the 6th unit here. So after they've done upper body exercises, now we're going to go lower body. Soccer. This is typically one of the harder ones to teach, especially if you have individuals that utilize. So this also gives you about 6 weeks or 4 weeks to figure out how you're going to adapt the soccer day for people that utilize wheelchairs. Maybe that's getting a beach ball, maybe some crab soccer. So thinking about how you're going to adapt that unit. So after soccer, this is when we're going to do for the 5th unit. You could think, you can do anything like badminton, pickleball. This is going to be some type of, this would be kind of, I'll let you decide. We'll probably do a pickleball unit here. So this gives them a lot of variation: hockey, pickleball, basketball, softball, and rolling exercises. And then for this one, I would go, after soccer, we would go to ultimate. So you could do disc or golf, disc, golf, or you could do soccer. So any of those 3 actually for the 7th unit. Then you can go into, what we're gonna do is pickleball here in the 8th week, and then volleyball, and then we're going to have football. So that's the 10 different sports I would do. I mean, ultimate disc, or you can do golf. You can do golf, soccer. So you can do soccer golf. So anything that is kind of like a golf or a disc golf game. Or you could do, you could actually play disc ultimate frisbee as well. So whatever you choose, that will be if you have the equipment. Pickleball, or you could do badminton or racquetball or tennis ball, which would be a little bit harder, but I would recommend pickleball because you can do that indoors. Volleyball, very easy, fun game to teach. You may even want to do volleyball before pickleball, so I would switch that. I'd actually put volleyball before pickleball so you can get a feel for the nets, going over the nets. So that would be smart. And then I like to do football last because generally speaking, you need some really good spatial awareness skills. So by that week, or by that 10th week, you should be set. So here you can switch this out with football if you wanted to. Okay, you could switch out hockey with maybe soccer, or you could put handball there. So if I was only going to do 5 weeks and then have my students teach these next 5 weeks, I would do something like this. If I'm going to teach 10 weeks, I would go games or sports. So when it comes to the warm-up, I will always start with like a yoga style, Pilates style class where it's like group fitness, everyone's sardined with mats and kind of seated and breathing, because that way it's going to allow me to get situated, who is who. I can do a little mobility and stretching skills to start to see what people's mobility is, see what their functional capacity is, how quick they get on and off the ground. It gives me some assessment time, people getting on and off their mats, doing specific activation, mobility, and some stretching exercises before getting them standing and doing some dynamic stretching like squats or push-ups or sit-ups and stuff like that. So I always do like a general stretch, mobility, warm-up with some breathing. Then we'll go into some core activation, upper body, lower body functional training, whether that's with or without equipment. Sometimes we'll use dumbbells, kettlebells, med balls. Then we'll work our way to low implement power training, or what we call that is the low organized game, which is going to be either dance, kickboxing, or a tag game. So like sharks and minnows, for an example, or a red light, green light. And then we're going to go into our sport, and then we'll have our closure. So the warm up is about 15 minutes. The low organized game is about 15 minutes. The sport is 30 minutes, and the closure should be pretty minimal, 1 to 3 minutes at the end of the class. So as far as the sport goes, you can do it 2 ways, option 1 and option 2. Option 1 is the 10-10-10 method, and option 2 is the station method. So the 10-10-10 is 10 minutes individualized, 10 minutes cooperative or with small groups, and then 10 minutes some type of game activity that involves the skill of the sport, so some type of fun activity for the students to play. So you'll have to figure out what individual skills are best for that specific group. So making sure that during this individual time that everyone has a piece of equipment, whatever this is, and so they can get a feel for the ball, practice the skills before they start doing stuff with a partner or a small group, and then get into some type of game or activity like sharks and minnows with basketballs, or playing flies, or playing capture the flag with basketballs or soccer balls, or something that involves the sport but a fun game that they can understand, that involves skills of the sport like dribbling, shooting, but also having fun. So don't always have to just play the sport itself. You do want to have some individualized skill time, partner skill time, and then some game time. If we're just playing the sport, then we would just call this recreational sports. This is not recreational sports. This is adaptive physical activity, or adaptive physical, or it's physical education that's adapted for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. That we can call inclusive physical activity, call it inclusive physical education, or we can just call it the UNCW's I Can Do It program, because that's what it is. So this is what we do: warm up, low organized game. Low organized game. After you've warmed up for 15 minutes and done some strength exercises, your nervous system should be ready for some power exercises like tag games, so sprinting and hopping, those higher end locomotor skills. Also thinking about med ball slam, or some type of exercise that involves a little bit of power, like a step up or jumping or hopping. Maybe that's an obstacle course, like a bear crawl to a hop to a lunge, that type of thing. Then you can also sub that for a kickboxing workout. You can sub that with a dance that you lead, so leading some maybe 3 to 5 songs. Maybe you could do the freeze dance, you could do the Macarena, the YMCA, something that involves upper and lower body, and then you can teach a 3-step class. So determine how you would teach dance or kickboxing, and then you could also teach a low organized game like sharks and minnows. So that's the log approach after the warm up. So that should be about 15 minutes. And then again, 30-minute sport. So the first method is the 10-10-10 method. The second method is the station method. So divide the gym into 4 quadrants and have 4 stations. You can do 5 to 6 stations if you'd like, and then focus on 4 to 6 skills. Maybe you have a dribbling station that involves an obstacle course. Then you have a shooting station that involves different accuracy pinpoints or shots that you have to take in a point system. Then you have like a passing competitive game where you're passing how many balls can you pass in a minute, and then maybe you have like a goalie station where you're pretending to be a goalie. And I'm talking about soccer here. So that's how you provide stations, and then you would just monitor those stations, and you do about 8-minute stations times 4, which would be about 32 minutes, or 7-minute stations, and you'd have about 2 minutes of transition time. Or you do 6-minute stations with 4 minutes transition time, whatever you prefer. So you have your stations or your 10-10-10 approach when you're teaching sport. If you don't have any equipment, then you could just have an extra long warm-up, an extra long organized game, and then you could get into fitness exercises or activities. So really squats, split squats, lunges, hip lifts for the lower body, pulling exercises, bear crawls for the upper body, planks, sit-ups for the core, any type of leg lifts or leg lowers. So whatever that may be, you could do that, and as opposed to the sport, you could also generate fitness. So you could also sub these days for just fitness day. Maybe every other week you had a fitness day. Okay, so maybe it's not a sport, you just focus on fitness. So, whatever your goals are, intentions are, develop that at the beginning of the semester. Know what you're going to teach. If you're going to teach 10 different activities, know what ones they're going to be and progress them like we have here. Or if you're going to do 5 things so that someone else can teach your own lesson, someone else can teach your softball lesson, someone else can teach your hockey lesson, so this would be kind of more for if you have a strategic leadership goal where you have mentors or volunteers that are part of the program that are going to help you teach. So if you have objectives for them to create lesson plan or to adopt your lesson plan and implement it, and then assess them on their ability to teach what you taught to the class however many weeks earlier. So this could be where I teach rolling exercises and bowling exercises, and then I have my volunteer teach it the next week. Or I could teach all 5 weeks in a row, and then that 6th week, the volunteers and mentors can begin teaching and having those leadership roles. So it depends on your goals, whatever strategy you think would be the most competent for you to be able to implement, and then whatever you think learning style of your mentees or volunteers are, or what capacity they have. So sometimes this is kind of all up in the air and you kind of figure it out as you go, but my best approach and strategy would be to figure this out, get this on the syllabus or expectations or requirements for the volunteering or mentoring program, and make sure that people know exactly what to expect, and so they can kind of see an outline of your lesson plan template, give them copies of the lesson plan visuals that you teach for all these, and then also allow them to implement those and give them feedback on how well they do. And then you would just take over their mentees while they're teaching during that activity, or you could have your teacher assistant or someone else, special educator assistant, help you out during that time. So this is how we would teach a 10 to 12 program, either the 10-week approach. So I have, let's just say there's 2 extra days, then I would add a first day where it's just fun activities, so like parachute. Last day would be fun activities and some type of celebration. Or I would just add in how I have golf or soccer, or maybe another game I could just keep adding. So then you would refocus for the spring or the fall, the following summer, whatever it is, increments. Give your time 6 weeks to plan the next program so that you have everything the way you like it, and then go ahead and implement it back for another 10 to 12 weeks. So make sure you do have a little time off period where you program and plan things, so you're not just winging it, and having that volunteer sign up sheet ready, the hours and all that coordinated by legalities and liability, HR, and your MOUs, that type of thing. So here's a 10 to 12 week program to have physical activity. Let me know what you think.